Welcome back to the Final Drive, episode 2. The draft was last night. Obviously, there was a lot of excitement, a lot of new guys coming into the NFL that are going to change the game. And they'll be really exciting to watch next season. Obviously, every team is not going to get who they wanted. There are going to be winners and losers. And I'm going to open it up to everybody. We're going to discuss some of our winners and losers. We'll get it started off with Hayes. Hayes, who is your big winner of the night?
So my big winner of the night is the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better player to fall to you than CeeDee Lamb. I mean, where were they picking it? Like 16, right? And he fell past all of these wide receiver needy teams like the Jets.
17, Will.
17.
17. Yeah. So he fell past all these wide receiver needy teams like the Jets, the Raiders, the Broncos. And I mean,
Even
those
the
teams did
49ers.
take – even the Niners, they took Kinlaw. And I mean, what's funny to me is that their division rival, the Eagles, who are in desperate need of a receiver for Carson Wentz to throw to, were 2 picks behind them. And it's just so funny to me how the Cowboys picked CeeDee. And that receiving core is pretty good now. I mean, Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, and CeeDee Lamb.
Hayes, what do you think this does for Dak's situation with his contract? Do you think this gives him more gives him a better chance to stay in Dallas?
I feel like he might want to lower his price now just because, with this new receiving core, both Cooper and Lamb are going to be – I mean, Cooper's already a star, but Lamb is more than likely going to be a superstar. And, both those guys are going to need to be paid. And Cooper got his big payday. Lamb is going to eventually want his. And so I think Dak needs to, more than ever now, take a team-friendly deal to stay in Dallas.
And I guess lastly, do you think that that's a core that could stay around for a while? Like those guys, like, is there a chance that Dak stays for a couple of years and doesn't get that huge contract that he really wants?
Yeah, I mean, I doubt he'll get the contract that he wants. I mean, it'll still probably be pretty big and honestly bigger than he deserves. But I feel like that group of guys is going to stay around for a while. Aside from Zeke, I could see Zeke moving on just because running backs are, pretty easily replaced in today's NFL. And I could see Zeke moving on at some point in his career.
I also feel like I don't know if Dak will get his contract extension going into this year because I feel like they drafted another talented receiver. This is going to be his, prove it year. Prove you're our guy. If not, I feel like Jerry might try to move on in next year's draft.
All right. That's a good point. I guess next up, why don't we go with Ty? Ty, who was your big winner?
I mean, I kind of had 2 big winners, 2 guys, 2 teams that really kind of just picked the best player available or moved up to pick the best player available. I have the Arizona Cardinals picking Isaiah Simmons and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to get Wirfs at 13. I feel like those were both picks that could help their teams really improve, and they took the best player available and kind of took advantage of the situation they were in.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
I completely agree with you about the Cardinals. Isaiah Simmons, in my opinion, was the best defensive player in the draft, even better than Chase Young. He runs a sub 4.40, and he can play all over the field. He can play safety, he can play corner, he can play edge rusher, and he can play linebacker extremely well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Caden, you were definitely really high on him, and he's one of the guys that we highlighted on our Instagram right before the draft. And both of us, Caden and I, both had him going to the Cardinals, so I don't know what that says about us, but whatever. Croc, who is your winner last night?
My winner from the draft was the Chargers. They got themselves a solid QB to take themselves into their new stadium this year. Herbert has a ton of potential, strong arm. And they also got Kenneth Murray, which was my steal of the draft. I had him going to the Saints at 24. And Murray is just a tackle machine. He showed that at Oklahoma, and he led the NCAA in tackles as a sophomore. And, I feel like they got themselves 2 proven players who really improved their team.
Yeah, I think all of us actually had the Chargers. The biggest winner, if not one of the biggest winners of the night. Kruk, you mentioned like what this does for them moving into the new stadium. The Chargers are often the teams that are at the butt of many jokes just because they don't have a lot of home fans that show up to their games.
Yeah.
What does having Herbert show up to be the quarterback do for the city of Los Angeles and go into the home games in the new stadium?
Well, it gives them someone to build their team around, and hopefully, he turns out to be a good player for them. And when you're moving into a new stadium, it's important to have a guy that's young, likable, that can play well. Herbert grew up a Chargers fan. He posted it on his social media last night. And I feel like Chargers fans are going to like that, having someone that grew up a fan of their team and is, now playing for them. So, I mean, it's a good story, and I feel like Chargers fans are going to be drawn to go to the games more with, all of the amenities and super expensive new stadium. So
I agree. I feel like Herbert definitely fit more of a San Diego mold than Tua. I feel like Tua kind of fills that Miami mold, and Herbert fills the Chargers mold. So I feel like all the top three QBs kind of ended up where I thought they should have.
The
I feel like
Chargers needed a spark because, to be honest, half their fan base left when Phillip Rivers went to Indianapolis. And I mean, ever since they relocated, they just have had abysmal attendance. I mean, like every game, it feels and looks like an away game for them. And I mean, we've heard that from the players. And bringing in Herbert can really bring life to the team and attract a lot more people to come to the games with a new quarterback. And I mean, they already have one of the, arguably one of the best rosters in the NFL. And I mean, bringing in a young quarterback in Herbert can really help with the attendance there.
I feel like this is going to do a lot for the city of Los Angeles. Remember, the Chargers share the city with the Rams, and now with this draft and with all the hits that the Rams have taken in free agency, I think the Chargers become the most exciting team in the city now. With the addition of Justin Herbert and Kenneth Murray, those are two huge pieces that could potentially bring the Chargers back to the playoffs and maybe even fill up the stands a little bit more.
Yeah, that's a great point. That Rams versus Chargers sort of dynamic. I actually did not think about that, but I think you're right. The Chargers probably become the most exciting, probably most cheered for team in Los Angeles, which is a good thing for them, definitely.
Yeah, especially with the Rams' trash new logo. There might be some fans changing allegiances.
Hey, but we haven't seen their new unis yet.
That's true. We'll see if they go to a mediocre team to watch then without the logo or with the uniforms. Well, I guess on the flip side of the winners, you always have your losers in the draft, and there were definitely a couple last night. Why don't you guys open it up to who were the losers last night? Who were the big losers?
My big loser last night was the Packers. I know you're a big Packers fan. I'm just not feeling the Jordan Love pick. I don't think you should waste a first-round pick on somebody that's just going to ride the bench for a while. Aaron Rodgers he's not still in his prime, but he's got plenty of good years left. And I think he's going to play for at least 5 more years.
Hayden, on the flip side, I'm not that big on Jordan Love either, but you have to acknowledge that's kind of the same thing they did with Rodgers while they still had Favre and kind of let him develop for a few years. So I don't know if they're trying to copy that mold or what's going on, but I'm not high on Jordan Love, but I kind of feel like that's what they were going for.
The Packers should be in win now mode they should be in win now mode rather than trying to build for, 4 or 5 years in the future with Jordan Love. I mean, there were still good receivers on the board when they picked, and they traded up to get Love, which is really interesting. But I feel like they should have gone with a skill position there. And I mean, they haven't taken one since 2005, and they did. But I feel like they should have gone wide receiver.
Yeah,
go ahead.
They had Laviska Shenault and T. Higgins both on the board, and I think both of those would have been great picks for the Packers. Great fit in that offense.
Now, I am actually on a different view. I was uneasy about the pick at first, but after really looking into it, Ty makes a great point. It's very eerily similar to the Rodgers Favre situation. When Rodgers was drafted with a 24th pick in 2005, again, that was a first-round pick, and Rodgers didn't start until 2008. And Favre still had good years left. They made it to the NFC Championship game in 2007. Of course, I was at that game, but we don't need to talk about that. And, even though Rodgers does still have good years, sadly, it's time to – I think it was a good move to start preparing for the future. And with Jordan Love, I think he's the perfect guy just because he showed really amazing flashes of greatness, but then he also had – the amount of interceptions is really bad. And, of course, hopefully he learns from maybe the best touchdown to interception ratio quarterback ever. And he can cut those down and maybe become the face of the franchise for a couple more years.
Playing a little bit of devil's advocate here, but I just don't know if you should have wasted – I feel like it was the similar situation, but I don't know if you should have wasted a first-round draft pick on a guy that's potentially going to be your future, but his future is so questionable. I mean, somebody that threw 20 touchdowns to 17 interceptions, I just don't know if that's someone you can rely your future on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially with the Packers only having 2 picks in the next 142 picks of the draft. I feel like it would have been a lot smarter for the Packers to go with the wide receiver in the first round and then get a guy like Jalen Hurts or Jake Fromm in the later rounds of the draft to,
I feel like
have sit on the bench.
I felt like it – go ahead, Will.
I feel like the Packers do become winners here if they can get their hands on a good receiver in the second or third round. Laviska's still there, T. Higgins. If they can get one of those two, I feel like the pick then does become a good pick.
Yeah. And I feel very confident because I think the Packers' thought process was like, hey, we struck out on Jefferson, Rager, and there's one more. Brandon Ayuk. And they missed out on those guys. So I think their thought process was like, hey, we missed out on the first 5 or 6 receivers. I don't know if we're going to be able to get a chance to draft a quarterback for the future. So why don't we use it here? And I think the Packers feel really confident about getting a receiver in the second round. I don't think they would have – they would not have traded up to draft a quarterback if they didn't think that they were going to get a receiver because wide receiver is such a big need for them.
However, I feel like I just don't know if this was the move for the Packers. I feel like with CeeDee Lamb falling, the Packers could have made a package deal to jump up and grab CeeDee Lamb and pair him alongside Davante Adams and just give Aaron Rodgers that talent and then maybe try to go for a quarterback the next year or the year after. I just feel like that should have been the right choice.
Definitely. I will say, I just wanted to point out, though, that Aaron Rodgers, since, besides just him being one of, the greatest quarterbacks in history, his ability to elevate the players around him is honestly something that I've never seen before. Looking at just the last couple of years, his talent, there's memes about it, except it's a true thing that the Packers' talent at receiver has not really been close to – it's nowhere close to what Patrick Mahomes has. Just looking at the last couple of years, Davante Adams has been their best receiver. I think he's better than Jordy. I think he's much better than Randall Cobb, Donald Driver, Greg Jennings, the guys before him. And I think that people are looking to Packers and they might not be as good next year because they're so, quote, desperate to get a wide receiver. Whereas I think Rodgers is so elite that he can still elevate the guys around him. Just like you saw Scantling, just like you saw Lazard last year, and even Jake Kumaro, who was on no one's radar, and then he actually caught touchdowns last year for the Packers. So I think you can't overlook how good he is at that. But I totally understand where you guys are coming from with the Packers needing to draft a receiver. But I think they're going to do that in this round.
I think that's a great point you make there with Aaron Rodgers' ability to elevate the level of play of those around him. I feel like if I'm not mistaken, they have a second-round pick, right?
Mm-hmm.
Use that pick on somebody like a Chase Claypool or a Denzel Mims, like a big receiver with a good head.
I was even gonna say Chase Claypool. If he's there, I would love that. I would love that pick if
Yeah.
Claypool's there.
I think he would
Okay.
be both of those guys would be amazing
Mhm.
partners with Devontae Adams.
Mhm.
So another loser that I had in the draft were the Miami Dolphins. So they had the most first round picks out of anyone in the draft, and I thought their first selection was good. Tua. I mean, they've been linked to Tua for the past 2 years, ever since he came out in the national championship game. And so I thought that was a great pick for them at 5. They didn't have to trade up to get him. But their other 2 picks were both big reaches, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Austin Jackson and the Auburn cornerback, who I'm not going to say his name because I would butcher it so badly. I thought both those guys were reaches, especially the Auburn cornerback. I mean, you've got Trayvon Diggs and Christian Fulton still sitting there, as well as Xavier McKinney, Grant Delpit, and all these safeties that are still on the board.
I will want to, yeah, and like even the announcers seem surprised, which their whole thing is to make every player sound great, but like they were surprised at that pick, I thought. I think that they could have easily traded down to get him because I don't think he was on anybody's radar. I don't know what you guys think there.
I don't know if Miami's necessarily a loser. I feel like Miami didn't go for the best available guy. They're playing very risky. I feel like Tua's injuries, that's also risky. I think Jackson coming off of not being as well developed as some of the other tackles and offensive linemen. And finally, that corner from Auburn who was getting beat deep a lot. If they develop these players, I feel like they can be great talents. Because even that cornerback from Auburn, he played press very well and was able to keep short routes almost locked down. But if they don't develop, that's where the risk is coming in. But if they develop, they can be stars.
But yeah, and you have to remember that the Auburn cornerback played wide receiver 2 years ago. So he's just beginning to grasp what it takes to be a great cornerback. So, I mean, if he's definitely a developmental prospect for them, and it will definitely take time for him to grasp the NFL game and what it takes to guard NFL receivers. But the potential is definitely there with wide receiver speed and stuff. So, I mean, the Dolphins are kind of just like in the middle for me. I don't see them as either a winner or a loser right now. So,
Yeah.
Brock, speaking on corners and the ability to guard NFL talent, what do you think of AJ Terrell for the Falcons?
Yeah.
I think that he showed flashes of brilliance, but he's also been beat by great wide receivers like Jamar Chase. But in the national championship game against Alabama 2 years ago, he showed that he has the potential to make plays in big moments with the pick six to start off the game, picking off Tua. So, I mean, he does have a tendency, even with his top line speed, to get beat with deep balls and show some sloppy technique. But I definitely feel like that can be cleaned up with NFL coaching and that he'll turn out fine for the Falcons.
I feel like a big concern was him getting absolutely destroyed by Jamar Chase in the national championship game. And if he's going to be the Falcons' CB1, he's going to have to guard Michael Thomas 2 times a year, DJ Moore 2 times a year, Chris Godwin or Mike Evans 2 times a year. The man is going to get – I feel like he's going to get absolutely abused in his first season. But I feel like going down the line, he has a chance to develop. But I don't know if he's the cornerback 1 for the Falcons at that pick. I feel like they could have traded down and then gotten him.
I agree with you, Ty. And I believe that Terrell is probably getting thrown into like the worst situation that he could be, aside from being on the Panthers, because then he'd have to play Julio Jones twice a year too. But having to go up against Thomas twice a year, Moore twice a year, and the Buccaneers receivers twice a year is really difficult. Is going to be really difficult for a rookie cornerback to come in and do. And I mean, I felt like it was a good pick for the Falcons, but a bit of a reach.
Hey, think about this. He's going to have to guard Julio Jones in practice every day. So he might get a little bit of preparation for Michael Thomas, DJ Moore, Mike Evans, and Chris Godwin.
That's a great point. He'll definitely be able to get that experience, regardless of if it's in practice or in game. He'll at least understand what it's like to guard, the next level of elite receivers. But yeah, I guess I just wanted to ask, like, did you guys like him being drafted at 16, or did you guys think you could have traded down to get him?
I don't
I feel
like
like it
that.
was-
I don't like him being picked there at all, honestly. I mean, so many teams could have vibed up to get that pick because they know CD Lamb was available. If the Falcons would have bluffed and showed any sort of interest in CD there, I feel like they would have had GMs calling their phones and really kind of just moved back, taken their pick a little later, gotten a little more for it. And but I think another factor that kind of inhibited that was the virtual draft. I talked about this with y'all via text and calls. I just feel like the virtual draft really inhibited a lot of trades. Like, as I said, I think it was the first time in I forgot how many years, but that they didn't have a trade within the first 10 picks. And I think that was due to the virtual draft.
Yeah,
but I mean, you can see that with the 2015 draft where a trade didn't happen until pick 15. I mean, there were still 3 trades during the draft. So, I mean, it was about as many as I expected. I expected there to be less trades, but it wasn't like there was no trades. I mean, trades still occurred as the draft went on and teams got more comfortable with
Brock,
the
you expected
virtual
there to
draft.
be less trades?
Yes. I expected
Then-
there to be, because
then
usually
3?
there's around like 5 or 6 trades during the draft, so I expected closer to like 2 or 3.
Oh, I thought you meant
I'd
less
say that's
of
fair.
3. Okay.
No.
That's
yeah,
fair.
I think that's fair. That was going to be my next question. Like, what did you guys think of the virtual draft? Like, how was it watching it? How do you think it affected the draft, just besides the trades and stuff?
I thought they handled it about as well as they could have.
Yeah.
Aside from Goodell, like, screwing up his English like every other sentence. I thought he did a good job. I thought the fans coming up behind him on the screen was really cool.
They didn't have enough Chargers fans to fill in. But
Yeah.
keep going.
No.
fill it up.
Nor did the Raiders. The Raiders were just cheerleaders.
But I mean, they still had the little jingle before the picks. I mean, for a virtual draft, like I didn't notice any technical glitches. I mean, like they didn't say that there were any that happened last night, so I thought it went like really smoothly. I enjoyed watching it. So
I personally liked seeing all the players and coaches' homes and like the GM setups. But I think another thing I really liked seeing was kind of the people who had fun with it, like Henry Ruggs in the robe, just kind of at home. And you can't talk about having fun with it without talking about Mike Vervell with the Frozone and the
Was
bullet
that
in the
Frozone?
background.
Was that who that
was,
was?
yeah.
Okay.
It was a Frozone costume.
I was
I don't know
thinking
what was
more
that.
of a Teletubby for that one. but you never-
What's a Teletubby?
wait, we're not gonna
Next,
get into
next,
that right
next,
now.
next. No, but like seriously though, just with the hand that they were dealt, I thought that it really went very well. It was watchable. It really never got boring, which could have been a possibility. I think like Ty mentioned, some of the best parts are seeing the players' reactions, getting able to walk on stage, and it's just sort of the NFL is doing the same thing as we all are and trying to make this feel as normal as possible for everybody.
Yeah, one of my favorite reactions was Javon Kinlaw. You know his story, and then you see his dad just fall off the couch with excitement. I thought that was amazing to see. I just thought I enjoyed this virtual draft in this time of quarantine. I felt like it really brought a sense of normality. Although it wasn't the real draft, I feel like it kind of brought that to us.
Yeah, I definitely.
I mean,
so big props to the NFL for really making it work. So I think we all sort of feel the same way. Hayes, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, I mean, we're all just thankful that we get to have some form of live sport in a month and a half. I mean, it was just like it's
I
just
can only
refreshing.
imagine the ratings are probably pretty good on that one.
Yeah.
I guess we got one more thing to do, and that's of course we play our Am I the Only One? So I guess I'll get us started off here, and I'll say, am I the only one that thinks the Dolphins will come out of this draft as the biggest loser? Looking back
Ooh.
on it.
Ooh. it depends on how they do in the next couple of rounds, but that's a bold statement. I feel
I
like.
think
I mean,
because
like
I
just with
think
so many picks, I feel like they can't possibly screw them all up. I mean, Tua already, like, if they hadn't gotten Tua, it would be lower. But I mean, for me, it's like, it's down there, but it's not that bad because they got Tua.
I'm saying this as in 10 years. If we're looking back and we see, and there's the possibility that Tua, his injury concerns are still there, he doesn't become the star. Those 2 picks that you talked about they reached for, maybe they were reaches and they didn't turn out the way that they wanted. And maybe the Dolphins are still really bad in the years to come. I'm just saying that there's a possibility, and I think that they could come out of this as one of the worst drafts that there could have been. I just think there's a possibility.
That's an interesting take.
I feel like when they took Austin Jackson, that was a big reach, and there were plenty of better linemen that they could have taken. Also, when they took Noah Igbenogene from Auburn, that was a reach too. Obviously, they had Trayvon Diggs still available. They had Christian Fulton still available. Both of those would have been way better picks there. They're both more skilled and smarter than he is.
Yeah.
From what I've seen.
Caden, like I said earlier, I just think Miami drafted talented players. It's just whether or not they develop. Jackson, you cannot ignore his size and just sheer ability. I feel like, but if he gets refined, he's going to be a star. And so do I feel like a lot of the other guys they drafted. They have to be refined though.
Yeah, definitely. All right, why don't we go to Croc next? What was your Am I the Only One?
Mine was, am I the only one that thinks that Mekhi Becton will end up being the best offensive lineman of the draft?
I don't think you're the only one. I really don't. I was watching him last night because I really didn't know much about him, but I was watching highlights after the Jets took him. And the Jets, I had him going there in my mock draft. I think the Jets were set on getting him. And, man, he looks really, really good. And I think I agree with you that he could come out of this as the best lineman.
I definitely agree with you that there's definitely people that think that Mekhi Becton could be the best out of the draft. But I think the same could be said about the other 3 of those big 4 offensive tackles of Andrew Thomas, Mekhi Becton, Tristan Wirfs, and Jedrick Wills.
I agree with Caden. I feel like all of those guys had talent, and it's going to be really interesting to see how they all play out. I feel like they're all going to be pretty good pro players. It's just whether or not they stay healthy and kind of just stay on the right path.
Yeah, Caden, you're obviously a huge Georgia fan, and we didn't really touch on it. What did you think of Andrew Thomas going as high as he was? I think that was a surprise for most of us.
I mean, I had Jedrick Wills going there, but you guys saw my reaction. I was loving it. I love Andrew Thomas, and I love my dogs, and when they get drafted high, that just hypes me up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. SEC, best conference, 6 out of the top 10.
Oh, yeah.
15 out of the 32 players selected last night were SEC players, which is absurd. And then, all right, so let's move on. Ty, what was your Am I the Only One?
I had kind of 2. One of mine was, am I the only one who thought Clyde Edwards-Helaire was a perfect fit for the Chiefs? And we'll just go off that one for now.
All right, I feel like Clyde is a really good fit for the Chiefs. He's really skilled, but I don't think he was the best running back that they could have taken. I think he and DeAndre Swift are very similar in their abilities, but DeAndre Swift is better at most of those things than Clyde is. Like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I think he's stronger than DeAndre Swift and has better, he can run people over, but everything else, I think DeAndre Swift's better than he is.
I personally feel like Clyde Edwards-Helaire just fit the Chiefs situation perfectly. They needed that receiving back to complement the receivers. I mean, they already have Damian Williams who can kind of take the just normal run plays, but having that second back, like I kind of said in our previous episode, Clyde would be drafted as a 2-back and just impact coming off. So I feel like that's what they drafted him for.
I completely
that's-
agree with you,
yeah.
Cade. Because I feel like Edwards-Helaire's, I don't want to say a budget Swift because they're very similar and they're very close in skill in my book. But I feel like Swift definitely has the edge over him. And I feel like the Chiefs could have gone that route too. But I mean, Edwards-Helaire wouldn't have been their next pick unless they traded up. So if he was their guy, they needed to get him there.
I'm going to echo both what Cade and Hayes say. I totally agree with both of them. I don't think he was the best running back available, but if that's the Chiefs guy, and I'll be honest, I haven't watched as much of him as I have Taylor and DeAndre Swift, but if that's the Chiefs guy, then I think it's the right pick for them, even if he wasn't the best guy.
And my second one was this was kind of a loser as well as kind of am I the only one? Do you guys think am I the only one that thinks the Seahawks drafting Jordan Brooks at 27 is a very big reach over
I
Patrick
didn't
Queen?
feel like it was as much of a reach as people thought because he definitely did produce at Texas Tech. And when the Seahawks picked him, they were talking about how the Seahawks weren't wanting people to know who their pick was because they were so set on him. So I feel like the Seahawks, they've drafted great linebackers in the past, and they know what it takes to be a good linebacker. And if they see that in Brooks, then I totally understand their pick. I mean, he showed flashes of being a great player at Texas Tech. He can get downhill, rush the passer from the linebacker spot. But I definitely feel like they drafted him a little high. But I mean, you never know what teams are thinking of when they make their pick, and if they see something that other teams don't see, then I mean, I'm totally fine with it. So
I agree with Croc. I totally echo everything that he's saying. Have we do we do everybody? I think we did.
I haven't gone.
Kane, that's right. Oh, well then, one of you go.
Am
You
I
gotta
the
go.
only one that thinks that Xavier McKinney is definitely talented enough to be taken in the mid first round, and he should be off the board right now?
Oh, I completely agree.
Yeah.
I feel like guys like Grant Delpit, Christian Fulton, and Xavier McKinney should be off the board right now. And I feel like that a lot of teams, such as like the Saints and a couple other teams, are going to try to move up and kind of snag one of those guys that fell. So I feel like the start of the second round today is going to be very interesting, and it's going to have a lot of trades.
McKinney's just in a poor situation because a lot of the teams at the end of the first round reached on a lot of prospects, and then that just forced him out. And it just sucks to see him because he's going to lose all that money.
Yeah.
But yes, he's definitely talented enough, and he should have been taken in the first round.
I was going to pose that question to you guys. Do you think that he fell because teams saw something that they didn't like, or was it strictly because of situation, what teams needed, or just stuff like that?
I feel like it's
I think
definitely
teams were just
situation.
kind of set on their guys. Like once it comes to the later picks, teams are more set on their guys. They didn't really expect these guys to fall, so they don't have as much research on the guys that they know are their guys. So I feel like that's where that came in.
Yeah. All right. Well, then, Hayes, why don't you finish us off here with yours?
So I feel like mine might be a bit of a hot take, but am I the only one that thinks Grant Delpit is the best player remaining?
You're definitely not the only one, but I feel like seeing how, as I just said, this second round plays out, I feel like you're going to have a lot of teams coming up trying to get Delpit, trying to get McKinney. I feel like Delpit will be one of those players who can kind of have like a Jamal Adams effect and come in and just play out of his mind.
yeah, I feel like McKinney has a very slight edge on Delpit just due to his versatility and ability to play corner when needed. But Delpit definitely will fit some team schemes, and I definitely feel like a team like the Saints could possibly trade up for him. And Delpit's more of the hard-hitting safety, while McKinney is more of a coverage guy, which is more what teams need now due to the amount of people that pass a lot in the NFL. So I feel like McKinney will most likely go earlier than Delpit in the second round, but don't expect Delpit to stay on the board long either.
Yeah, I agree with y'all. They're both really talented players, 2 of the best in the class. And yeah, I agree that you said Delpit's more the big hitter tackler, and McKinney is more of a coverage safety. I agree with that. I saw him play back when he was at high school in Roswell. I didn't know who he was because I was like a 6th grader, but I watched him play and I'm like, wow, that guy is good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, so if that pretty much wraps it up on this episode of the Final Drive. Come back on Monday. We're gonna record another episode, episode number 3. This will be on YouTube. Check us out on Spotify. The Final Drive. Follow us on Instagram at the Final Drive Podcast. Everybody, stay safe. Wash your hands, please. And we'll see you guys next time. See
See you
ya.
after the second round.